In January 2023, we got the keys to our Italian farmhouse. At this time, there was no electricity, no running water, and the only heating source was the old rusty stove with a pipe that needed to be urgently cleaned. Even though we had big dreams for the renovation that lies ahead of us and we would have loved to dive straight in, from that moment onwards, we had only one priority: to get the newest part of the house as ready for this winter as it could be, without spending too much of our limited renovation budget. It's mid-November now, and while most days have been sunny, the temperatures are dropping.
Last week we had the first frost on the ground, and although we're in Italy, we're quite close to the Alps, and that means that the winters here can get quite chilly, with usually a few weeks of snow.
It's a good thing that now we do have electricity, running water, and a working boiler, central heating, a functioning wood stove, a big pile of firewood, and less drafts inside the house. Did we get everything we wanted done? No, not exactly. As to be expected, we had some unexpected issues show up and slow everything down. But taking into account we've barely been living here full-time for 5 months, we tackled quite a lot. Getting the electricity switched back on was a fairly simple administrative process. We have 2 electricity circuits at the property, one that is 230 volt and the other 380 volt. The most recently built part of the house and the old cantina run mostly on the 230 volt circuit, but it's kind of a weird mix. All the other parts of the property run on 380 volt. We've decided to not activate the 380 volt circuit just yet, as it's an extra monthly expense that at this time we would barely use anyway.
Well, the 230 volt electric wiring is still in place, and luckily it still works, but obviously it's very outdated. And it's crazy that there's just one circuit in this part of the house, in the modern part of the house, with all the appliances hooked up to it. It's either on or off.
Maybe this is why the previous owners, when they more recently installed a 380 volt circuit, installed a couple of newer power sockets in this part of the house that run on 380 volt. One of those has been used for the boiler. Of course, all of this is less than ideal. The whole electricity setup and wiring has to be completely renewed when we renovate. But for the time being, it's pretty wonderful that it works with only a few minor adjustments. We replaced electrician's tape for terminal blocks in a few places and screwed a couple of power outlets that come loose back in place. The staircase is, oddly enough, not connected to the 230 volt circuit, so for the time being, we installed rechargeable LED lights. And then we only needed a quick visit from the electrician to switch over the boiler socket to the 230 volt circuit so that once the gas tank was in place, it could be activated. Hopefully we will have a gas tank sometime next week so that we can take showers, have warm water, have the central heating run, so fingers crossed. Because the current heating system and stovetop both work on gas, we decided to stay with that for now, until we switch to more renewable energy sources in the future. We had hoped that after having electricity, running water and the gas tank, we would be able to run the central heating. But alas, not everything can magically work from the first try. To activate the boiler, the water pressure had to be much higher. I can't remember now how many bar of pressure we had before, but it was very, very low. Getting us hooked up to municipal water supply was a purely administrative process, as the connection to the grid was already in place. But it was very clear from the beginning that we had a problem with the water pressure. So we have water since today, but in the kitchen at least it's not very it's not very decided that it even wants to be here. At first, we didn't make much of it, because in general the water pressure in Italy is lower than what we are used to. But at times the pressure was so low that we couldn't even flush the toilet and had to carry buckets up and down. Two guys from the water company and our plumber came down to replace a few parts and install a shiny new pressure regulator. Yesterday we discovered a leak after the water pressure was fixed, and the plumber is bringing over a muratore, a builder who can break open a piece of the cortile to fix the leak.
Non ne vedo braccia, guarda. È bucato. Guarda qua il buco. Visto.
So you can understand why it was leaky. It's more rusty than steel. And then a third leak popped up, and we just kept on digging a new trench and putting a new extra pieces of pipe. But of course the whole pipe is just gone.
Lo lascio lungo, non sto a tagliarlo, al massimo lo tiriamo un po' su, perché così almeno non faccio tante giù.
È più stabile dopo.
Fixing the leak turned out to be one of the biggest, longest projects yet. When we discovered it and knew that we had to open up the courtyard to put in 30 meters of new pipe, we decided to do it in such a way that we could simultaneously plant a border of flowers and herbs. I had been dreaming of doing this in the future, and all of a sudden that future was now.
Today is the day that we're going to dig out the trench for the main water line, well, from the main water valve to the house. First we have to clear some asphalt still that I broke open with the jackhammer, and then we have to break open a sublayer of concrete still beneath the asphalt, and then we can dig out the trench. It's going to be a fun day. It's the first time I've handled an excavator, so.
Somewhat frustratingly, it's also a temporary solution that will need to be redone later. Let me explain. We first need to get clear on our renovation plans, which will determine what diameter of tube and what connections we will eventually need to get plumbing not just to the main house, but also to a few of our outbuildings. Then we'll have our geometra or architect draw the plans needed to get the planning permission, and then, when we get all of that in place, an Italian plumber has to sign off on the job. Under the asphalt was a mix of sand, rubble, huge blocks of stone and solid rock. We chipped away at the solid rock as much as possible to make sure the tube was at least 50 centimeters deep.
Daar is die.
We saved all the stones for future projects. And then we filled the trench back up with a mixture of soil, straw, shredded cardboard and compost. In case you were wondering why, the straw and cardboard had nothing to do with the plumbing. They were just another source of organic matter that will break down over time and help the plants flourish, and we had it lying around. By not closing the trench with a new layer of concrete, we will make it so much easier to open it up again later when we thoroughly redo all the plumbing on the property.
Ja hoor.
While we were in the midst of installing the new pipe, we had our plumber check if the boiler was still in good enough shape to use, and had the company who installed it about 15 years or so ago come over to clean it. It's now all good to use for a few more years, and we are so happy with warm showers.
Misschien moet je gewoon eens een geheel afpakken en dat uit de muur trekken.
The first time we lit the stove, we got a smoky kitchen as a result. Of course, the chimney had been cold, but our guess that it was also blocked turned out to be correct. While the chimney is still in a good state, the spot where the pipe goes into the chimney was completely blocked by dust, soot, sand, and half-decomposed tree leaves.
Whoa.
We took out about 2/3 of a bucket of muck. We also scrubbed off the rust, or rather my mom did, and gave it a fresh coat of stove polish. It looks so much happier now. So far, we've hardly used the central heating at all. We heat the kitchen with the stufa and spend most of our time in there when we're not outside or working. We learned to use a chainsaw for the first time in our lives and started building our own firewood supply last winter by cutting down dead trees and trees that were too close to the buildings. Most of that wood has to season for another 12 to 18 months before we can use it. It's a mix of black locust, European ash, and fig. We've been studying the ancient practice of coppicing and are excited to start bringing that into practice on the property. We have quite a lot of tree varieties growing on our land that are perfect for coppicing, like ash, black locust, elm, oak, and hornbeam. As we wait for our own firewood supply to season, we've bought firewood from our neighbor and built a 6 cubic meter wood stack to store it in.
Eens kijken of het zwaar is. Dit stuks.
This winter is going to be a test to see how much firewood we actually need. If we run short, we can always buy more from our wood guy.
The current windows on the first floor are from the 1960s, and so they're not the best choice for energy saving, of course. But we are not sure yet if you want to order new windows or if you want to restore these still and put double glazing in them. And by now, winter is coming, and the current waiting times for ordering new windows is like half a year, so it would be too late anyway.
We started this window project as a tryout to see if we could save this window and if we would enjoy doing so. This window was in such poor condition that we could hardly make it worse than it was, so it felt like a safe place to start. Turns out we actually really enjoyed the process and we feel like we'd happily restore more of them. With the next one we do, we'd love to try double glazing it. It should definitely be possible, as the depth of the frames is big enough to accommodate double glazing. We've been going back and forth for a while about whether retrofitting our current 1960s windows is a good idea as opposed to getting custom-made new ones. But we're feeling encouraged to do so after talking to a few people who've been doing this exact thing in our area.
It's pretty.
One of my evening projects for this week is making draft stoppers for all the windows upstairs that are still single glazing, so that we keep the drafts out and the warmth in. I'm going to use old towels and blankets and other old fabrics we have lying around. Some of them we found in the house. Some of them are blankets that we used for the move to pad furniture in the van and turn these into something useful again. Besides the draft excluders, we're doing a few more little things to improve the heat retention of the house. We've started to hang curtains in the bedrooms and in the upstairs hallway. In addition to the curtains, we're recycling bubble wrap that we had left over from the move to tape over the windows. It might not seem like much, but it's definitely making a difference, as we haven't had condensation on the bedroom windows in the morning since doing this. And now that we're ready for winter, we're also ready to start looking ahead and make concrete plans. We're not in a hurry to make rushed decisions. We're not promising to present our plans sometime soon or to start with the big works in January. The past 5 months have showed us to listen to the house and what it's telling us, to hear what it wants to become in the next chapter of its centuries-old life. Because even though it might sound fantastical, old houses really do talk, as long as you're paying attention.